this moment, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to my friend, Mr. Nate Scott.
You know, friend is a word that I don't toss around lightly. You know, many times people don't put any weight in that.
Sure.
And for me, I can count on my hand the people that I actually say, that's my friend. Because the way that I look at things is that I'm a reflection of you, and you're a reflection of me, you know? And so the next level with calling you a friend is calling you my brother.
Sure.
You know?
Absolutely.
And that's really where the bond is. So it's exciting for me to be back in town and have us to have the opportunity to carry on with the conversation that we had today.
Right.
That allows us to now get on camera and actually talk amongst each other so that other people can actually experience it, because many times people never experience the kind of depth of real friendship and brotherhood and the type of substance we engage in when it comes to this type of life.
Yeah. In my vein, sometimes you can kind of get pigeonholed, and that doesn't always mean a bad thing. You know, people know me as the money guy or whatever, but I think that something that's important to me and something that you bring to my life is I really do try to operate on the 4 pillars, what I call the 4 pillars of wealth, you know. And so those 4 pillars are, you know, number 1 is, you know, financial. Number 2, maybe your health. Number 3 is time freedom. And then number 4 is status, but not status for the sake of being famous, but status from the standpoint of influence, having influence enough to where you can move people. Because I think that's one of the most ultimate forms of leadership, is not only the ability to gather and collect and to coordinate money, but the ability to collect and gather and coordinate people and lead them or inspire them to a certain end. That's the ultimate level of wealth as it returns to status. So Nate, I just wanted to thank you, because you represent those things to me as well as my brother and my friend. So that's why I thought it'd be great for us to call it a rap session. So Nate, what I wanted to do is actually give you an opportunity to share your story. Let the people know who you are and a little bit more about you. Not that they don't already, but there's a crowd of people who know me that I'm introducing you today. So yeah, just share a little bit about how we got together, and then, you know, our journeys and how we've kind of come back full circle.
Yeah. Well, that journey really begins, and I was talking earlier about the story that brings us to where we're at.
Right.
And it's that backstory that's so critical. You know, I grew up in a small town outside of Savannah, Georgia, with a dream and aspirations of playing college basketball. I also started thinking about financial independence as a 10th grader in high school.
Wow.
And so I boiled it down to business or real estate as the areas in which I would be able to become financially free.
Sure.
I saw basketball as something that I wanted to do as a dream as well.
Yeah.
And so when my basketball scholarship fell through coming out of high school, I immediately enrolled in college courses, continued to play sports. And then when I got to my unit in Germany as an enlisted soldier, that's when I started on saying, what are my next moves?
Sure.
And so taking classes in Germany as an enlisted soldier, one of my professors, her husband was a West Pointer.
Okay.
She knew my company commander. They approached me about the idea of going to West Point. Now, ironically, I had no intentions of going to West Point. I actually had a disdain for West Point officers, you know. But what I did was I said, okay, let me see if they're going to do anything. Mm-hmm. Now, what's also interesting about this time, Kevin, is that I was a student of Malcolm X.
Okay.
I threw myself into the study of Malcolm X, and so I had an edge about me. Mm-hmm. I really didn't believe people were going to be doing what they're going to say they were going to do.
Yeah.
But this lady kept putting paperwork in front of me. Desert Storm came up. She started sending paperwork over to the desert. See, her husband was a West Pointer. Wow. She knew my company commander. They approached me about the idea of going to West Point. Well, at 19, when I walked perimeter during Desert Storm, I said, Lord, if you allow me to make it back, I'll never waste a day of my life. That's the vow I took at 19. I'm 48 today. And that vow is what propelled me to make decisions. I always call it value-based decisions. Yeah. Every decision that I make can be traced back to my values. Every decision that you make is a reflection of your values. Our relationship is a reflection of my values.
That's right.
That's how we are connected. And so when I got back from Germany, I got the opportunity to go to West Point's prep school. And then February 26, 1992 at 10:30 a.m., I drew a Benjamin Franklin T. I took the pros and the cons. And I made a decision to go to West Point from that exercise.
Wow.
And I went there saying, you know what, though I'd have to put up with a lot of BS and I'd have to do all these other things, I said that it would set me up for success. And I went there very intentional. I went there to make an impact. And so, you know, as we reflect and as we get older, we think about how our relationship began and how we were pulled back together after our 20th reunion, I think it was.
Yeah, after our 20th year.
After 20th, we got reconnected. And we had never had these type of conversations together, but through that, we had a commonality from a business side.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so I had some financial success because, as I said, I threw myself into this world of financial freedom mindset wise. 1996, the week we graduated from West Point, I got introduced to the world of personal growth and development and entrepreneurship. And from there, it was all about me picking up books and going to seminars and being around successful people. And as I've spoken around the world, I tell people that what makes me unique is that I got introduced to the world of personal growth and development and entrepreneurship via network marketing. But for me, it was never about an opportunity. I was enamored by the knowledge piece of being able in a positive environment, a growth environment, like our relationship.
Sure.
Most people don't have an environment that's fertile for growing and growing this mind here.
Absolutely.
And so when I saw that, I threw myself into that. And as I've spoken around the world since 1996, I tell people, take away my West Point degree, which is in engineering sociology. Take away my MBA from George Washington University. Take away my financial planning from Georgetown University. When I learned to pick up books and go to seminars and be around successful people, that's what laid the foundation for me to make my first million by 32. It wasn't because of the opportunity pitch. It was because I realized that I was the asset.
Yeah. That's something that I reflect on, and actually on my personal journey, I think about checkpoints, if you will, throughout my my ride on this on this thing called life. And I can reflect back to West Point and wanting to very clearly wanted to be in finance or be a financial planner, but as people who understand where we went to school, it's not set up for that, So it's a great place to learn how to think and learn how to lead and learn how to be led. And there's a lot of life lessons that can be gathered from being there. And I think peer leadership, as an aside, is probably one of the most valuable laboratories you can operate in, with peer leadership, because I don't think there's anything more challenging than leading your peers, just for various reasons. I remember thinking about, I wanted to join this financial company, or what was I going to do with because I was a literature and philosophy major, with a minor in information systems. And the reason I got there, actually, I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an anesthesiologist. Sometimes being able to make quick decisions about what you're not going to do,
absolutely,
help you on down that path that you're not, wasting a lot of time. So, but that was what I was going to get to is, I think it's really interesting and it's very intriguing. I want you to share with me a little bit more about your thought process to where you could even appreciate a certain atmosphere, an atmosphere where you're being inspired or you're being challenged, or you can recognize the opportunity. Because I think that's how a lot of us get so far down the line, is that by the time we get to figuring it out or recognizing what really presents itself as an opportunity for growth, not just to make money or do a certain thing, but to really grow or to really elevate or accelerate your journey. How did you learn to appreciate the value of opportunities in certain environments at such an early age?
Yeah. What was interesting is that recently I was communicating on Facebook with the lady who actually presented the opportunity to me.
Okay.
And what she said was that she shared the opportunity with all of her students, but I was the only one that took it.
Wow.
And I always pay attention to things like that, and I start reflecting. And what I came away with, Kevin, was that we are we see the world as we are, not as it is.
Right.
We see the world as we are, not as it is.
And that's where people get into the perception is reality, because your perception is your reality in a sense, I guess.
The root for me was that at 19, when I walked perimeter during Desert Storm, I said, Lord, if you allow me to make it back, I'll never waste a day of my life. So I already had an image,
almost a mandate
of who I am, who I am and whose I am. You see, so that means from that day on, I was always looking at opportunity.
Okay.
I was always looking at something that was going to get me to the fulfillment of what I knew was my promise.
Sure.
So that's it. And so no matter what scenario, even in meeting today with you and your friend, I looked at it as opportunity, because again, I know that I'm a person of value.
Right.
So that means I have to then put myself in a position where I'm able to show that value.
Sure.
You know, and so when I went to that room full of happy people, it was a classmate of ours, James Cadet, that invited me to that meeting.
Wow.
I went to this room full of happy people. You remember the movie Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah, I do.
Right? The guy came up, Chris Gardner, a white guy came up in a red sports car.
Yeah.
And Chris Gardner says, "Ooh, I got 2 questions for you. What do you do and how do you do it?"
Yeah.
Those 2 questions, I always tell people, those are $1 million questions.
That's good.
And from there, when the guy told him, "Well, I'm a stockbroker," Chris Gardner in real life spoke it out loud, a limitation. He said, "I guess you got to go to college for that." See, one of the things is that many times that's what people do on a daily basis, but they keep it in their own mind. So they'll come across someone that has the right information, but then they won't actually put out what they're really thinking.
Absolutely.
That false belief that needs to be broken.
Absolutely.
In the movie, it was showed that the guy actually broke a false belief. He said, "No, be good with numbers and good with people." Right?
Yeah.
And then from there, that scene cut away and says, "Why can't I look like that?" Right? That's what I mean about, right. So that was my experience going into that room. I didn't see it for what they were painting it out to be. I saw it based upon who I am. We see the world as we are, not as it. I was a student. I was a sponge. And I never knew about picking up books and going to seminars and being around successful people. And so that's the thing that I took away, because I was already showing myself to be intelligent and smart. So we bring whoever we are to whatever situation we go into. Right? And so that's the deal for me, is that my ability to see opportunities is all predicated first and foremost is that I have an expectation that God is going to give me more. The expectation is founded on the word that says, "Now faith is a substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen." Well, it's unseen to the natural eye, but to the mind's eye is very clear. And so in every aspect of my life, that's how I go about things on a daily basis, which is why the writing of Life is Rich, How to Create Lasting Wealth is so important, because life is rich, how to create lasting wealth. The term life is rich means I live in fullness every day because I realize I'm Christ's heir.
That's good.
That means spiritually, mentally, emotionally, relationally, physically, and financially. And that then is where we came together, because again, when I saw what your values were in your mission and how you looked at wealth, there was a parallel where I said, "Whoa, we're like this." Right?
I remember the conversation. One of the first conversations we had when we actually reconnected, and we were kind of catching up. You know how we do. You know, we'll all call, check in on each other from time to time. I remember I was walking outside into the yard because I think the house was noisy or whatever. But I remember walking outside. But before I went out, we were just kind of high level conversing about some stuff. And then I got into what I do, and I immediately heard a switch in you. Like, "Oh yeah, that is. Hey, we need to let's talk about that some more."
We need to go deeper.
Exactly.
Get all the surface. We got all these surface conversations.
Exactly. But you know what? But one of the another jewel of that is that when you're listening, and you're intentional when you're listening, and you actually have a core set of values and principles from which you operate, it becomes much easier to recognize opportunities as they present themselves, or it becomes much easier to explore and go from the high to the deeper level, which I felt would happen with us. And it was immediate. It was like a spontaneous combustion. And then it's really, interesting as we walk back through time, how a lot of our experiences were very similar. That you were in real estate and I was never in real estate, but being in finance together as financial planners and doing all of that, and having an entrepreneurial mindset and the approach, and really understanding how everything we do, including the things that we know how to do, the trades, me as a trader and and a person who does real estate on any level as an entrepreneur, they're all tools for your own growth and development, and for they're tools for another thing. Just like I speak about money, it's people get it twisted because they set out with that being the main thing, and they never really get it that you probably, and I'm not saying that the struggle will not be there or the challenges won't be there, because you spend 30 years of your life getting into a situation and you want to get out in 2 days, so it's not always going to be like that. It can be like that, supernatural things do occur, but the point being, the sooner that you realize that everything that we're doing is just a conduit, for service, for growth, for ministry, which is service, and as you see it that way, with even with wealth creation on the financial level, you know, when it becomes a tool to do more or to create more or to accomplish an end goal, you don't look at it as the end game, you know. And so now it's not about, I always use an analogy, this is a little bit of a crude analogy, but I talk about money is like blood, in the sense that money is meant to flow, just like blood is meant to flow. If blood is not flowing and it's not in the proper setting, it will coagulate, you know, and that's how you have these stoppages in your veins, because it clusters, and then it, you know, just like it does when it's outside of the body. It's because it's not built for that.
Right.
And so the same thing, it's okay to have a blood bank, i.e. it's okay to have a savings or have something put back or to have, you know, something in reserve for an emergency. But the end game is not just to have a big blood bank.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, the blood bank is used to go out to help people stay alive, to grow, to change the world.
What's interesting is that there's a book called Start With Why,
okay,
by Simon Sinek.
Sure.
And with this book, I think those of you that are watching this, I think this will help you to see kind of how we are somewhat different in our approach and what's most important.
Sure.
Simon Sinek talks about the bullseye. So if you imagine a bullseye, you got a circle in the middle, and then you got a next ring, and then you got a third ring. And I take people through an exercise where I say, with the words how, what, and why, tell me what to put in the center. Mm-hmm. Well, why should be in the center. Why do you do what you do?
Right.
The next on the outer ring should be how.
Sure.
How do you do what you do? But the very last ring should be what. Most of the time, though, everybody else focuses on what. In fact, and you probably experienced this exact same thing, but whenever I walk into the room, especially those networking events,
sure,
the first thing people ask is, what do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Mm-hmm. And I talk about this in life as we're trying to create lasting wealth. Right. I say, who do I be? Who do I be? Who do I be? Is be do have for me?
Yeah.
You know, mm-hmm. Who do I be? Being, I'm a human being, not a human doing.
Yeah,
right? So you start with why. And when you start with why, then that means everything else falls in the right place. That's what I mean by value-based decisions.
Sure.
Value-based decisions is what draws us together.
Absolutely.
Because the things that we're focused on is not that temporary fleeting thing.
There you go.
We're focused on the long term, which means that we can go through our storms.
Yeah.
That because we're not focused on just getting somewhere. Yeah. It's truly about becoming.
Absolutely.
Who are we becoming on a daily basis?
Absolutely.
You see, and so I talk to people about how to think versus what to think. Mm-hmm. I talk to people about your thoughts leading to your feelings, which lead to your actions, which lead to results. Yeah. Those are some principles and some philosophies about life that in turn express why and how I am.
Sure.
And my ability to connect with you was because I wasn't intimidated by your success.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, so we were able to have conversation, and I light up because I'm like, man, tell me what you got going on. Because I'm like, I want to know what you got going on, because I know maybe there's something more that we can do.
Yeah, and so when I read your book, it was really interesting to me because I didn't know exactly what to expect. I'm getting a little emotional about this. It's kind of cool. It was like a blueprint. You know, we say things in different ways. Like, you know, you can say something in French and Spanish and English, and you can mean the same thing. I was reading the book and I was like, man, this is perfect. I mean, this is truly the blueprint. It was applicable, and it was something that, you know, you could actually take something and it fed different elements of my own personality. You know, I'm a philosopher, you know, so I can see the philosophy of an approach, you know, but it was very technical, and I'm a Virgo, so I'm very process oriented, you know, so it had all those elements, but it was so clear. You know, if I had started my entrepreneurial life, or my, you know, quote unquote post-military professional career, or, you know, even in the military, you know, if I started when I got serious about creating something of value, if I'd had that book 20 years prior, man, there's no telling what would have accomplished. Now, I don't operate in regret, but I'm just saying that from a point of reflection, it's so potent and so powerful. And even as I pick it up from time to time, you know, I leave it by my desk and I'll pick it up, or if I'm traveling, I'll go back and reread through it, and just things about formation of companies, and, you know, how to, you know, create your budget, and how to look at your finances, and just really granular, you know, what they call now atomic habits, you know, and I always say a dollar is made up of pennies, you know, so you take care of the small things, and the big things start taking care of themselves, you know. And so I wanted to commend you, and I know you just have an anniversary edition of your book, but I just thought it was so phenomenal, because it touched me in a lot of places. And I remember very clearly when I was actually in the military. I don't think I've shared the story with many people publicly, but I remember being in the military and just really having this hunger, you know, and it was really almost like, man, I know I'm supposed to be doing something. What can I do? What can I do? What can I get into? I was just so thirsty. You know what I'm saying? I was so thirsty to get something done. I was like, man, I felt I was like 22, 23 years old, but I felt like I was wasting my life.
Right.
As crazy as it sounds, you know, I mean, I had an honorable and a noble task at being an officer. I mean, that's very, very important, you know, but for my own purposes, the things that I felt about myself and where I was, I didn't feel like I had anything or anyone that I could really trust to get me there. Even when people are successful, a lot of the times they're not willing to share the elements of that success. And so people shouldn't take it for granted that you created this book that is a true blueprint to wealth on multiple levels, on the pillars. You know what I mean? I mean, health, wellness, financial, time, freedom, and because that's ultimately a byproduct of doing things well. And then the status that comes with it because people want to learn what you do. Right. And so now your influence increases and now you're operating. You have that four-legged stool right there in your book, man. So I applaud you and I commend you for that, brother. That's some good stuff.